Good evening and welcome everybody to this meeting of Cheltenham Borough Council's Cabinet. I'm Councillor Rowena Hay, I'm leader of the council. Welcome to the members of the public watching the live stream of the meeting and to the members of the public who have come to ask questions. So the recording of the meeting will be held for 4 years. And so anybody who is here now to make any form of representation to the meeting, you are consenting to the use of the sound and video recordings for broadcasting and training purposes. So there is CCTV and audio recording is in operation in the foyers and in the public gallery, again with recordings held for 5 months. Please note that there's no fire alarm test expected, so if the alarm does sound, you should immediately make your way to the nearest fire exits. I've received apologies from Councillor Richard Pinniger. Otherwise, we're all present and correct. Declarations of interest. Any members want to declare any interests in any of the agenda items for today? No? Thank you very much. So the next item is the minutes of the last meeting, which are on page 5 to 18 of the report. Is there anybody who's got any comments on that? No. So you're happy for me to sign that as a correct record? So the next, can I see a show of hands? Sorry, I should have said that. Could I see a show of hands? Thank you, that's unanimous. We do have public questions and we do have member questions. The member question, we don't have Councillor Beale here, so there will be no supplementary on that question. We do have a public question from Richard Lawler to Isaac. Richard, do you want to come forward? Sorry, Mr. Lawler, would you like to come forward? Can we take your question and your answer as read and replied to? Thank you. And do you have a supplementary?
Thank you for your written response, Councillor Telford. Based on the Council's own records or those of partners such as Gloucester County Council, the police, or the Cheltenham Paint Festival, how many individuals are thought to be responsible for repeated graffiti tagging in Swindon Village? Of those incidents, what proportion of offenders have been identified? Does the Council, either directly or in partnership, maintain a tagging database to record signature graffiti tags for possible future prosecution, or equally to support diversionary programmes that could help prevent reoffending?
Thank you, Mr. Laura. It's not information I have to hand at the moment, but it's something that I'll be happy to talk to officers and my colleagues about in various portfolios, because obviously, as you can imagine, it crosses from the public realm and art into communities and safety and all sorts. The police are obviously best placed, but also we have our neighbourhood team as well. So I'm happy to talk to officers and get back to you with an answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lawler. That now leads us on to we've got no report referred to us from either the council or any of the scrutiny or any other committees. So that leads us on to the report section for cabinet members. And our first report of the evening is the civil penalty notice policy under the Housing and Planning Act 2016 and the electrical safety standards in the private rented sector. And that's the report of Councillor Clucas.
Thank you very much, Leader. It is important that this matter is decided today. And it's important not just because it is a requirement legally, but because of the impact it has on our tenants. We want our tenants to feel safe in their homes. We want our tenants to know that if they have an issue or a problem, that will be looked at by officers of this council, and action will be taken where necessary to ensure that their homes are properly furnished, properly maintained, properly sorted for those areas which are a requirement by law. And obviously, as this is a legal requirement by the council, for the council, with the council, it's really important that all tenants in Cheltenham have their voices heard. And that means all tenants, not just council tenants, not just tenants of other social landlords, but those tenants from the private sector too, because the law change means that this council will be the go-to organisation to help those tenants ensure that their property where they're living meets both legal requirements from the national government and also what we see as requirements locally. In other words, if tenants are not listened to, then we will take that up. If tenants don't have their electricity properly sorted, we will take that up. If there are repairs which should be done, which aren't done, we will take that up with landlords, and landlords have a legal duty to respond and to act, and we will ensure that that happens. So thank you, Chair. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Clucas. Does any member have any questions to start with? Questions to start with? Yes, Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Councillor Clucas. A couple of questions from me. Given that this is national legislation that we're enacting, do we get any additional funding from government to help us with this? Secondly, how well resourced are we to be able to manage and issue these penalties? And thirdly, where will the monies received from fines, where will they go? Thank you.
Flo, microphone.
My apologies. Have we had any cash to deal with this? My understanding is that we haven't, but that may well come a little further down the line. We have the Director of Housing here, if you wish her to answer those questions. From an officer point of view, I'm very happy to pass over to Caroline to do that.
To ensure I give you an accurate answer, I'll take that away and come back to you.
Can I just say in relation to staff, we are bringing new staff in at the moment, and that new level of staffing has begun. More is on the way. But whether it will be sufficient to do what is required, particularly given this is the private sector we're talking about, I think that needs to be looked at again. And so I would suggest, if you would wish to join me in a meeting, I'm happy to have that meeting with officers over the next few months, and we can talk through what might be required, given what we know is going to happen in relation to the requirement to deal with the private sector. If you'd like to do that, Councillor, I would be more than happy so to do.
So comments, members. Councillor Atherstone.
Thank you, Leader. I'd like to thank you, Councillor Clucas, for bringing this report to us. I found it extremely insightful reading through all the requirements that are put on landlords when it comes to letting a property. And you know, I've been a tenant in a let property for many years as I was growing up, and I was like, oh, I didn't realise that at all. So actually, as the report states, the council is aware there are probably a lot more households out there where renters haven't complained, probably because they don't realise it's their right. So anyone that is renting in Cheltenham, I think it would be really, really great if we could perhaps summarise the policy into something a little bit more readable so that we can help to spread the word so that renters know their rights and that we are made aware of living standards that are substandard. And also, I think it's a great tool for those on the other side that are actually looking to rent out their properties as a checklist of what they are required to do, you know, legally and following this policy. So I think this opens up a great opportunity to make the whole sort of renters environment a lot better for both the landlord and those renting. So thank you ever so much. And yeah, I look forward to seeing this being shared a little bit more widely. Thank you.
If I can just respond briefly to that. Yes, we do take that on board very, very seriously, because without knowledge, there's no action, because nobody will do anything, because they will not know what they can do. So I think you are right, and we are already looking at that. You will see a little later on the agenda, the tenant voice, tenant and leaseholder voice. That is something that I think we can use for all tenants, whether public or private sector. And that kind of tenant voice can enable, rather than confine, what tenants see as their opportunity to make sure that their homes are livable. Because a livable home is a great thing to have. Not having a livable home means that you are uncomfortable, cold, not able to cook meals because the electricity is not working properly, a whole host of other things. And they're the things that we will be looking at with our tenants, with tenants in the private sector, but also with landlords, because landlords have to understand what their responsibilities are and how we expect them to fulfil those responsibilities.
Before I go to Councillor Jeffries, Bernadette, your name's on this report, and I just wondered whether you wanted to respond to any of the questions. I know Caroline has said she'll come back, but I wondered if there was anything you wanted to add in this point. Do you want to use the microphone, please?
Thank you. Sorry. Yes, it was just really, it adds transparency, doesn't it, for landlords, so that landlords know what to expect should they not comply with what's demanded of them. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jeffries.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Councillor Kluges, for bringing this report. Anything we can do to improve standards in the private sector and for tenants across the board is always welcomed. But I've sat in this chamber far too long, unfortunately, to not have a pot shot at the government. The last government completely failed to enact any legislation, in fact, voted down legislation to improve standards in this area. This government is doing something, but the big one for me, whilst it does, you're right, Bernadette, improve transparency, and hopefully those good landlords, as Councillor Atherton's mentioned, will look at that and say, oh, this is what I need to do. There are far too many landlords out there that just won't care, and there are far too many tenants out there who will still be scared because we've got a housing crisis. So until the government closes that circle off and actually builds the houses, not just puts a target in place or puts some money to it, and actually reduces the pressure in the housing market, it's an uphill battle. I do welcome this, I really, really do, because it does enable us to try and improve standards where we can and support tenants where we can across the board. But I will be a bit reticent until the government actually does something serious when it comes to the housing market and the pressures, full stop. So it's a bit of a negative, I know, but I do welcome the report. Thank you, Councillor Kluges.
I'm sorry, I don't regard that as a negative. I regard any comment in relation to what we do in housing as a positive, because we can learn from it. So, and let me just say to you, you will have read the report and you will have seen in the report the financial penalties for landlords who don't do what they're supposed to do. And they will have a significant effect, because if you're fined 15,000 quid because you haven't done a particular job you should have done, and that can go up if you don't do that job in a particular length of time, then you are going to think twice about not doing it. And also, of course, the names of landlords, of organisations, of companies can then be utilised by tenants associations, indeed by council, to say, why are you going to go to this landlord when X is the case, when this landlord hasn't done Y than when they should have done? And that means that you're right, the numbers of properties, the number of houses, the number of homes we're able to offer will need to increase, because without that, I'm afraid that tenants in those situations are prisoners of the landlord. That's not what we want. We want tenants to feel that they are emancipated in relation to what landlords do, how landlords control, how landlords charge them rent for properties that should be in good condition and maybe not. So we will be looking at that. And I have to say, the officers who've been working on this have been tremendous. And I want to say thank you to you publicly for all the work that's been done, because we know what we need to do, and we will be making the best attempts we can to make life better for our tenants.
Before I go to the to ask for the support and approval of the recommendations as written here, I think one thing we do need to remember is that the greater majority of landlords are responsible landlords, and it's the minority that we're aiming to tackle. I think it's quite important to say that it's because we want to work with those landlords. Because of the residents, but it isn't the majority. It's probably the minority, and I thought that was just worth mentioning. But could I see a show of hands to approve the recommendations as they're set out? Thank you very much. That's unanimous. Our second report of the evening is again the Tenant and Leasehold Voice Plan, which is the report of Councillor Clucas.
Thank you, Leader. Colleagues, one of the things that we are looking at doing is to put our tenants at the heart of what we do. And we're doing that because they are really important. And over time, quite often in the past, that has not been the case. We are not a tick box organisation. We are an organisation that listens to tenants and leaseholders. And that's why they are members of our housing committee. It's why we have committees where they can come and they can say what they want to say without fear, without being intimidated. They say it. And I love that, because what that does is give us the opportunity to act on their behalf, to give them what they need, and also to explain when we can't do that because of government or legislation. And so between us, the voice that tenants have, that our leaseholders have, is really pertinent to what we do. And I'm just very pleased that we have tenant voice coming to this cabinet for approval so that our tenants and our leaseholders know that they are not just simply a name on a list where we collect rent or where we have a lease given to them, but they're actually an important part at the heart of what we do as a housing organisation for people in this town. And I recommend the report to you.
Any member got any questions? Any member? Oh, question. Councillor Baker.
Well, I thought this was a really excellent report. Clearly, the key to this is getting our tenants to participate and to engage. Otherwise, the whole thing just collapses around us. Can you give me an idea how we're going to sort of build up those relationships, get those tenants involved and make them feel part of something really important?
Right. How long have you got? Okay, I'll be brief. The situation is basically we already have a group of tenants at the heart of what we do, because as an organisation, as a council, tenants are really desperately important to the work that we're doing. Without them, we don't get the information, we don't get the feedback, we don't get the opportunity to build, to change, to ensure that they have their voice heard. And so one of the things that we will be doing is actually doing community walks, right? That has already started. The other thing that we will be looking at is actually having a change in the way different areas are managed, so that those areas actually will have a single person to whom that tenant can relate. And that person will have responsibility for linking together aspects of the council's provision for our housing. So what we'll have, in effect, is a community with a single person that they can go to. That person will be responsible for sorting things out for them. And if there's an issue or a problem, that person will come to us and say, we can't do this because, and the tenant and the leaseholder will be told. So it's important to us that that is understood by our tenants, but it's also important to us that we actually furnish them with an opportunity to take part. And I don't know if you've had an opportunity to look through the Tenants' Voice posting that is going to all our tenants, but that is actually going to offer them the opportunity to say, excuse me, I need to, excuse me, I want, can you explain? Can I get involved? If I can get involved, how? And all of that is really important, because without that, all we're doing, frankly, is ticking a box. That's not what we're going to do. Our tenants are at the heart of everything we do. They need to understand that. We need to know that. And I'm really pleased the officers we have been really championing this. And I love the fact that they have, because all of us then are working together to make this happen.
Can't see any other member. I'd just like to make a comment around the fact that I remember it is a good few years ago, but we used to have, CBH as it was then, used to run monthly walkabouts in different parts. And, I would often go out with them. So, if you're doing that again, which is what this paper's saying, I think it'd be really good if you just let members know. And actually, because the other thing that was really helpful as well is that you would give feedback, or the officers would give feedback of what they found within the wards, because then that gives us a really good picture of where there is, people not looking after their gardens. Because often as well, what I find frustrating is when I've got a tenant, one of our tenants, that will bring me a piece of casework and say, this house is a mess, you need to get your housing team. Well, actually, it turns out to be a private house rather than a tenant, which we can't do an awful lot about. So, but I think some feedback on that would be really helpful to members, because I think it's a two-way street as well, isn't it? Is that by doing that, it lessens the individual work of councillors, and perhaps finding some sort of mechanism and the right person to go that gets added to that list of faults and things that you found, so that you're not dealing with lots and lots of different pieces of casework from councillors. Just a thought that sprung to mind during the conversation. Councillor Atherstone.
Thank you, Leader. I particularly like your forward flow in the action plan. It's very, very clear and straight to the point. And I know you're a great champion of making things clear and easy to understand. I also really like how you've gone into a lot of detail as to all the different types of engagement activities. And I know a lot of them we're already doing, like as Councillor Hay just mentioned, in terms of the community investment walks. I've really enjoyed going out in St Peters with the team doing those. I particularly like the focus on the new forum for younger people and for older people. And with my sort of Cabinet Communities hat on, I'd like to say that I would very much like to work with you in the action of the action plans. You've detailed what you're doing this year, what you're doing next year, what you're doing the year after, to see how I can complement perhaps some connections or help. And also very much supporting our year of youth voice action. So, I think it's great that there's a really clear action plan as to, what you're planning to achieve and how you're going to achieve it. And I just wish you and the team all the success in delivering on that.
Well, can I say thank you? And yes. So please come join with us, work with us. Let's see what we can do together to make things better for people. And if we can, all to the good, because it's what we're here for. At the end of the day, we're not here just to sit in a room and talk to each other. Like we said earlier, we're here to make things happen, to do things, to give people a better life. So let's do that. Yeah, happy to have that.
I can't see any other member indicating. So could I see a show of hands to approve the recommendations as they are set out? Thank you very much. That takes us on to agenda item 7, which again is CB, our housing services tenancy policy and decamp policy. I think it's important actually just to say that none of these policies are brand new. They are updates to existing policies. It's not that we didn't have them before, But like any policy, we need to update them. I just suddenly thought we're talking about these and how much we welcome them, but actually they've been around. But they need a review. Rightly so. Councillor Clucas, if I hand over to you.
Thank you. I'm sure colleagues will have read this and will understand exactly what it means. One of the things I think it's really important is when we're communicating with our tenants to actually ensure that we don't just put into their doors or into their hands or through the letterbox something which we can read because we're used to technical and legal language, but something that is readily accessible to them, something that they can read and understand and know what is happening as a result. And one of the things that we have done with this, and I'm really pleased and I thank the officers for doing it, is to produce I guess a guide in easily accessible language for them to find out what there is there. And so from that perspective, I'm very happy with this. And you're quite right, Leader, these things have been happening over time. But I think the change now is that we actually see our tenants at the heart of what we do, not simply over there at the side. And as I say, I think for me, and I know for officers speaking to them, this is a really important change in the way we do things. So thank you again for the opportunity to introduce this.
Any member got any questions on this report? Any member got any comments on this report? That's a no all round. But so, I mean, thank you, Councillor Clucas, and thank you to the officers who pulled all these reports together today. Again, could I see a show of hands to approve the recommendations as they're set out? I think that's unanimous. Our next agenda item is the that's the three housing one. Sorry, I've lost my plot a bit here. So the next one is the notification of decisions made by the Community Infrastructure Levy Joint Committee, otherwise known as SIL. I think it's important to say that this paper is a decision that's made by the Joint SIL Committee, so that's Tewkesbury, Cheltenham and Gloucester. And this report in itself presents the decisions made by the Community Infrastructure Levy Joint Committee at its meeting that we had on the 14th of July 2025 concerning the allocation of funding from the Local Strategic Infrastructure Fund, so which is a ring-fenced 25% portion of the total SIL. The Infrastructure Fund receipts collected up to February this year, so the total available for allocation was 4,587,760, and that was pulled from the Cheltenham Borough Council, Gloucester City Council and Tewkesbury Borough Council. So that the Joint Committee approved funding for 3 of those infrastructure projects. 534,251 to the Blackbridge Community Sports Hub, and that came entirely out of the Gloucester and that was primarily funded by Gloucester and Tewkesbury. So where it has joint benefit, we pull the pot. Where it's entirely based within one authority, it comes out of just that authority's 25%. So in the next one, 150,000 to look at a combined waste and recycling depot feasibility study that's split between Cheltenham and Tewkesbury. And then Tewkesbury, 120,000 for the replacement Legion footbridge feasibility study, which is fully funded by Tewkesbury. That may not sound like a footpath is a very strategic priority, but actually this is also about the fact that it floods, which was a very big influencer on us making the decisions. Thank you. So these allocations are very much to support the delivery of strategic infrastructure aligned with the council's development priorities, their climate goals and corporate plan objectives. And the report also outlines the legal, financial, environmental and equality implications of these decisions and confirms that the remaining money in the pot for Cheltenham share is £901,879. And that remains at this point in time unallocated. When the committee met, I'm not sure whether it was yesterday or was it last week, but in any event, we've agreed, like any good document, we'd all submitted sort of what our priorities were moving forward for that 25% infrastructure list, which actually now needs, that was a year, 18 months ago. So we need to actually revisit. So all of the councils are currently revisiting what are their priorities to apply into this fund. So I hope that's enough information for members. The report's obviously quite a lot longer, but I'm happy to take any questions if anybody's got any. Councillor Atherstone.
Thank you, Leader. In the report, it says that the committee is going to meet again before the end of the year, and that those that haven't received funds this time round will be reassessed because some of the projects have moved forward. Is that meeting definitely going to take place before the end of the year? So, because there was one project in there for St Peter's, which I've got my eye on, which I would definitely like to be resolved before the end of the year if possible.
I think to be perfectly honest, it's in the diary and it should be happening, but we know that our major priority, and I think it's a well-known fact, that we're a bit short of money and we have a gap for Junction 10. So we have purposefully not allocated that money at this moment in time. As far as I'm aware, then yes, the meeting is going ahead, but there is also quite a lot of other SIL infrastructure. So it's the 75% pot as well. So at this moment in time, I can say yes, but that will depend on the priorities coming back and then us as authorities, each of us independently making our decision on that 25% as to what our priorities are. And they will be very much based around the need for infrastructure and that fit with our corporate plan and our priorities that we've already set out. Hope that answers. Anybody else for questions? Anybody else for comments? No, I'm not going to ask for approval because this report is to note. So our next agenda item for tonight is the report. Lost my place now. So that's, yes. So the next report is the current policy that's been out for review on the SEB. And this is a report of, and it's a review of the sexual entertainment venue policy. And that's the report of Councillor Atherstone. I'll hand over to you, Councillor Atherstone.
Thank you, Leader. I've got a bit of a change to the way that I would normally introduce a report this time. I think it's worth noting that the licensing of sexual entertainment venues is a very challenging matter. And in the absence of decisive action from successive governments on this particular issue, it remains the job of councils like us to try and find pragmatic ways forward. We have always taken the view that it is better to license premises, and that remains our stance. But we continue to acknowledge that this is an issue that prompts strong views, many of them opposing each other. The SEV policy is due for review, as we know, and it is the intention of this piece of work to review it. Despite consultation and engagement since the publication of this Cabinet report, further representations have been made to myself and to other council officers and other Cabinet members. As such, I would like to propose a different set of recommendations as already published and agreed this evening to allow for further consideration and potential amendment of the policy via the creation of a working group before a final version is presented to Council for approval in the next Council meeting. So the recommendations that I'm proposing instead of what is visible in the published report are as follows. Number one, that Cabinet defers the sexual entertainment venue policy. Number 2, that Cabinet establishes a Cabinet working group to review the policy, the terms of reference and composition of the working group, to be delegated to the leader in consultation with myself and other group leaders of the council. And number 3, the working group to report back to Cabinet on the outcome of their review prior to any revised policies being presented to Council for approval. So I would welcome any questions or comments, but ultimately I think we need a bit more time on this policy revision. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Atherstone. I think we were all aware that there was going to be that request, because I think actually what it does is it shows that we've listened, despite, as you said, despite consultation. So I think it's important. If members are happy, that's the request from our Cabinet lead on this, is that we support those recommendations, which actually means that we don't need to talk about the paper at all, because the paper as it stands is being suspended effectively for the time being. So unless there's anybody who's got a burning desire to say anything, could I see a show of hands that approves those recommendations? Thank you very much. That's unanimous. The next agenda item is agenda item 10, and that's the General Fund and Housing Revenue Account Budget Monitoring Report for Q1 of 25-26, and that's the report of Councillor Jeffreys.
Thank you, Leader. Colleagues, as Leader just said, this is the Q1 Budget Monitoring Report for 25-26. This report gives us a clear picture of the financial position as of the 30th of June, but also highlights where we're seeing pressures and where things are on track against the budget approved by Council in February. We're currently forecasting a year-end overspend of £295,000. That's a change from the original budget, which anticipated a contribution of £560,000 plus to general balances. I think the main reasons for this shift, as outlined in the report, are lower than expected income in planning and bereavement services, but also some delays in delivering planned savings. That said, our general balances remain above the minimum recommended level, though slightly below the optimum level recommended in the Section 25 report. This gives us a degree of financial resilience and stability, which is especially important given the wider economic uncertainty and rising service demands. On the housing revenue account, staffing challenges and the need to prioritise fire safety have triggered a full budget review. We'll bring further updates on that in Q2. Capital spending is broadly on track, though some rephasing may be needed to match delivery timelines. Our focus now is on maintaining strong financial management, protecting services, whilst continuing to deliver our key priorities. The key priorities this administration has for the benefits of its residents, our residents. I would also like to thank the Finance and Property team for their continued hard work. I do every time I do these reports, because they work extremely hard, and I'm grateful for their support. I'm happy to welcome any questions and thoughts as we look ahead, working together to keep our council financially resilient. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffreys. Any member got any questions? Councillor Atherstone.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Councillor Jessie, for the support. Just a question, and apologies for my ignorance, but in Appendix 4, the SIL statement from 2019-20 to 2025-26, the various dates through that period for the invoices raised, etc., showing the admin, parish share, neighbourhood share, strategic CBC share, it says from Exicom system paid out. Is there a way, because it says that every single time, is there a way to better understand where the monies coming in are coming from, like in terms of potential projects, or how this money is coming in? And then, just explain a little bit around about that. And then the other line where it says parish share, is that for all the parish councils collectively in Cheltenham, or is that year by year allocated perhaps to a specific parish council? So I guess I'm asking for this useful report to be fleshed out a bit so I can understand it a bit better, if that's okay.
Thank you for that question. I suppose I could flesh it out with a huge amount of detail, which I know that my colleague across there in the planning system will undoubtedly have with his officers. But it's not something I'd like to put into this particular report. It's quite high level. But in answer to your question, any information you need, I'd direct it to our cabinet colleague, Councillor Collins, who maybe had to speak to the relevant team to give you that finite detail. We could flesh it out with all kinds of, I think, really interesting information, but we'd have huge amounts of paperwork, I think, to go through. I'm happy to have a conversation with my colleague again after your discussion in case we can amend this and change this in any way to make it better to understand. Equally, I'm happy to have conversations before or after during the meeting in case we can improve things. Thank you.
Councillor Lewis.
Forgive me, I'm starting comments rather than questions. I don't think anybody else has any questions, so sorry to everyone. But... Okay, all right. Sorry to Mike, he can ask this question afterwards. I can't see him, so there's facial expressions going on. So I'm going to go for the comment anyway because I've started. I think I just wanted to say, as the cabinet member who set this particular budget back in February, it makes me feel very old. It's been a very long time since then. It was always a bit white knuckle. It was always incredibly ambitious. There were huge opportunities in the budget as we set it out. And between then and now, a whole lot of fascinating new challenges have been brought to the attention of Cheltenham Borough Council, it must be said. And I think the budget, as it stands now, in the report that Pete has taken, bounces back with incredible resilience in the face of some of the very large checks that they are being asked to sign in the face of housing challenges and challenges with recruiting the staff we need, the capacity we need to do more and more as government asks us to do more and more because they themselves can simply only do less and less. So I think while there is an underspend, it's a challenge, I'm sure, or overspend even, it'd be nice to have an underspend, that Pete, I'm sure, will find ways and means to reduce. It is incredible how well it's held up from where it was in February to where it is now.
Do you want to come back now, Councillor Jeffries, or shall I go to Councillor Collins? Come at the end.
I'll come at the end.
Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Lee. Just coming back to Councillor Aston's question just now. This is a report, and of course the report only contained things that we've previously been asked to produce. So if that's something in addition, I'm happy to have a conversation offline with Councillor Jeffries to see if there are things in there which we could include, but we have to be very careful that these things actually add value, because we could put 10 more things, 20 more things in there, an awful lot of work for officers. What actually does that give us at the end of the day, where maybe an offline conversation might actually be more useful? But I'm quite happy to have a conversation with you, Pete.
Councillor Atherstone.
Thank you, Leader. I just want to say that I think it's really great to see how Section 106 monies is being allocated for public art. And I've really enjoyed working with the Paint Festival, actually, on a project along the Honeybourne line. And I'm actually working with officers to extend that. So it's really, really great that, that we can see, you know, housing and investments and et cetera in our town, making our town better in terms of the public realm with public art. So, yeah, it's great to see that.
Councillor Jeffries.
Thank you, Leader. Hopefully Councillor Aston will speak to myself about the finite detail and we can have that rounded conversation. But just to pick up the point about the white knuckle ride in terms of finance, yes, I've travelled this road before yourself, and I'm sure colleagues have undoubtedly tried it previously. It is tricky. It really is when you think about it, because you know, we want to invest as much as we can in our town. If you look at the SIL spend, if you look at the Section 106 spend, if you look at whatever we spend, you know, on our services for our residents, it is about trying to maximise that investment in the town across all fronts. But equally, then you've also got to be very mindful that you've got to be as resilient and as well managed as possible, because you know what's around the corner. And over recent years, we've seen all kinds of things come at us. You know, COVID was the biggest one, I think, where we saw a £3+ million overspend. So, and given that the economic wins, as you say, broadly, whether it be regionally, nationally, internationally, they all have an effect on our finances. So that white knuckle ride, I'm continuing, and I will maybe make reference to that in any forthcoming budget conversations. Thank you for all the kind comments. Thank you, Leader.
Councillor Baker.
So I should have signalled earlier, but I think, and we've talked in here about cremation income and the pressures there. And so many of these things are resulting from things which are beyond our control. So mortality rates are about 4 or 5% lower than they were. People are living longer. So there is less people dying, and therefore there are less cremations and less burials. So that's having an impact upon the income that we're receiving at the crematorium. A crematorium which we invested in significantly many years ago, which is one of the best facilities in the area, providing fantastic service. But if your mortality rates are down, there's not a lot you can do about that. And on top of that, people are really feeling the pinch with the cost of living crisis. And so therefore they're looking at cheaper options like direct cremations. And it's very, very difficult. If that's all you want, you're not going to be going to our lovely crematorium. So there are real challenges, and all these are really beyond our control, but nevertheless, we still have to try and deal with them.
Thank you. I think a comment from me would be around the fact that, we continually, with all the things that you've just mentioned, Councillor Baker, like Councillor Lewis has mentioned, at the end of the day, we've got a set of priorities. And that's where when you've got a finite amount of money and we drop on that income, we have to take a real hard look at what we're delivering. And, I'm always of the opinion that you're better off actually saying that we've got to stop this in order to do this, rather than do 10 things at half the job. I'd rather see us do 5 things and do them well, because we can always return to the other 5 that we've had to put on hold and slow down. I know that's, that in an ideal world, we don't want to do all 10 absolutely brilliantly, but we have limited capacity and limited funds. So there's a lot of hard work that goes into these monitoring reports and constantly monitoring, what our income is. We can't affect what our income from borrowing or from generating from rents. We don't, there's so much that's not in our control, but it's a good report. So could I see a show of hands to approve the report? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. So that's the end of today's papers. That now leaves me to go around the room to ask for any Cabinet member updates that they wish to give in briefings. Councillor Collins.
Oh, thank you, Leader. I do like being first. I know. Anyway, you referred earlier on to the reports and the policies that we were listening to earlier on about them being updated were actually existing ones. Well, in the planning team, we've actually been doing that too. We've been updating all manner of existing reports and policies, but we've also been introducing quite a few new ones as well to improve the service that the planning team offers overall. And I must say that includes both planning policy and building control as well. And I would like to say that we've taken on some new officers, some new staff in recent months, in fact, in recent weeks. We've now got a new validation officer. So any planning applications that come in to the authority don't just get looked at by a case officer to, yes, that's okay, and we can proceed with it. We've now got an officer who will focus on that aspect of the work we do to make sure that the right people look at the right things and the case officers can go on and get on with their job. We've also just appointed a new officer who's going to be looking at Section 106 collections as well within planning to make sure that developers have paid the money they're supposed to have paid according to their planning permissions, and that if they haven't, we can follow them up with a nice, gentle reminder to start with, and maybe we'll go on and be a little bit more forceful as we go through the process. I will come later on to planning policy management. but we've also got some vacancies that we are recruiting in the near future as well. So the team will be strengthened, we'll have the right people in the right places, and it will offer a much improved service to what we've been used to in previous years. Thank you.
Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Leader. I wish I could say it had been quiet in major developments, but I don't think it has ever been quiet in major developments since the day it was established. And it has been a really exciting period for us as we're working through some very big projects. So we had the most fantastic meetup in London with our good friend and former colleague Max Wilkinson MP, where we brought together a whole bunch of stakeholders from Gloucestershire, from the tech sector, from universities, education, to try out a really cool new game that they've developed in partnership with Gloucestershire County Council, which allows people who might not necessarily think that technology careers are for them to try out this fun quiz game and see if they have the mindset, the right skills, the right pattern recognition skills to be really good in a tech career, which is part of a far broader, far more exciting scheme we have planned to tackle the massive challenges facing the cyber technology sector in our county, because there's so many exciting jobs, so many exciting opportunities. There aren't enough people working in the sector. And that's not just for us with our plan about bringing in, people finishing their GCSEs to go off to get the right degree or the right apprenticeship. But it's actually looking at how we can bring people back into the workforce in part-time capacities, people who are retired from the military, people who have incredible skills that we desperately need, but might not know that technology is for them, or how to find the right job or who to speak to. There is a fantastic project ongoing for this. And alongside this, we've rolled out the coding classes for the kids to even more local schools. I think we're going to run out of local schools to roll it out to soon, which is fantastic. It's a huge opportunity for kids to try out, learn some new skills, which are so important. But more than anything, it's free. So any kid, regardless of their background, can access the same exciting educational opportunities. On the Regent's Village front, which I don't always update on because there's a lot going on. It goes so fast, it's hard to do it this time. But this time I can give you some exciting news in that we are, sometime between now and the next Cabinet meeting, going to be handing over the very first homes at Regent's Village. I could not be more excited. They are fantastic, accessible homes, disconnected from the gas grid. They've got air source heat pumps. They've got widened corridors. They are the properties that our housing supply desperately need. And it's the first 10. Many, many more are coming, hopefully 10 a month, until we've managed to deliver them. So anybody who's looking for a house in Cheltenham who's on the housing waiting list, do keep an eye on the portal, because they will start being advertised pretty thick and pretty fast. And I have to say, they are fantastic houses. They are the first tranche of our major developments plans to build more homes. I had a really constructive conversation recently with the team working on the former Monkscroft school site about how we're moving at great pace towards planning to build, yet again, another 100% affordable housing development, which is fantastic. It's so nice and aesthetic that even the Civic Society thinks it looks nice. So I have great hopes for the planning committee when it comes up later this year. And 320 Swindon Road, we hosted a Meet the Builder event. So the neighbours alongside 320 Swindon Road, which for anybody who doesn't watch this every single month, which they should, is another affordable housing development that we are building on a former car park. So any number of houses is more affordable homes than the car park had to start with. That's going to be kicking off. We've got exciting plans. We've got the Meet the Builder event that they've had, and we will be bringing children and young people from local schools onto site at some point when we start building, so they can see how homes are built and what career opportunities they might have in the construction sector. Thank you.
Thank you. I will just say that skills test that they set us out, I defer to the younger generation. Councillor Telford.
Thank you, Leader. It's been a very busy summer across my portfolio, as always. And there's far too many things to list individually, but I'll highlight a few things that have been going on. Obviously, we had the Lions at Large Trail, which has been, I don't want to say a roaring success, but I think I have to. And now that's finished, but they're going to be shown at the racecourse from the 3rd to the 5th of October for a farewell event before they're then auctioned off to raise money for the Big Space Cancer Appeal. Obviously, that building's going to be in Cheltenham, so that's all really important for all of our residents. This Friday, the Wilson are going to be launching their new exhibition, Material Worlds, running until the 11th of January. And it's exploring how artists use textiles in lots of unique ways. And I know Lisa and the team at the Wilson have put a lot of work into this, as they do with all of their really interesting exhibitions. So I hope our residents do give it a go. It's free, after all, and it's something nice to do. The Cheltenham Trust have also launched their new weekly SEND Send inflatable soft play sessions at Leisure At. And this is thanks in part to a donation from the Pied Piper Appeal. So I went there to see that recently. And the Pied Piper Appeal are quite keen to start expanding into Cheltenham a lot more now. So I'm excited to explore how we can make that work and how we can support more of our children in our communities. But as well as things like the Lions at Large, CBC and our teams and various connected organisations have been working a lot with the Cheltenham bid recently on a lot of different exciting things, including renovations of the elephant mosaics on the side of Roxy Lanes, which tell a really interesting story about loose elephants in Cheltenham back in the 1930s, I believe. But it's a really interesting thing. If people haven't seen them, now they've been all done up. They managed to get tiles from the original artist who did it 30 years ago and all sorts. And it's really well done. It's been protected with a sealant to stop more graffiti or damage to it. So it's a nice little thing. But as well as that, just around the corner, there was the Cambrai Carnival recently, which obviously was with the council, Cheltenham Bid, No Child Left Behind, on Cambrai Place, which provided a lot of fun and free activities for children and young people on what was effectively the last weekend of the summer. And it was really nice because town was buzzing, and it was being at that end, my end of the high street, as it were, that you could then walk into town, and there was an arts market on the promenades. It had people all the way through town, which you don't always get. You have congregations of people in different sections, so it was really nice to see. And my last thing is, tomorrow I'm visiting the Everyman's new Grove Street project for the launch of their £1 million fundraising appeal for that, where they're converting the old community resource centre into their new education centre. So that should be a nice, fun thing, and I hope people will support that if they can. Thank you.
Councillor Atherstone.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Telford, I was also going to mention the Cambrai Carnival and to say actually a huge thank you to Cheltenham Bid and our own No Child Left Behind team for delivering on that. Through our youth survey and youth engagement this year, we are very much aware that we need to provide more free activities in the town centre. So the fact that we were able to have this at the end of the summer on a Saturday to have relevant activities on Cambrai Place and on the High Street was really, really great. And I really hope that we can continue to have Cambrai Carnival in the years to come. I touched on it earlier with regards to combating graffiti. With my communities hat on, I get a lot of complaints across the town centre with regards to graffiti, and particularly those the Honeybourne line and the Millennium White Bridge bases. So I'm really, really grateful working with our MP Max Wilkinson, who also received numerous complaints about the Honeybourne line. As a council, we've been able to fund this from SIL. And that actually we have some fantastic new murals now down the Honeybourne line and on the basis of the Honeybourne Bridge. So that has really, really lifted up the area. And I know that Andy from the Paint Festival have received lots and lots of compliments every day he's been there for about a period of 2 weeks. So thank you.
Thank you. So I turn to Councillor Clucas.
Just three quickies, Leader, if I may. The first is that we have started a discussion in relation to providing more homes for our veterans and how we might do that. And there will be reports coming forward in the future in relation to that. The second is in relation to how Cheltenham is seen across other parts of the world. And tomorrow I shall be addressing the Mayors Association of Hungary about the work that we've been doing, particularly with our young people, girls and boys, to bring about equality, to ensure that young people feel that they can get involved in politics and how we've managed to do that. So that is for tomorrow's discussion. And yesterday I received an invitation from the Council of European Municipalities and Regions, which is an organisation of some 41 countries and about 1 million councillors, give or take a few. And I've been asked to join their housing task force, and I will be taking to that the work that we have been doing here to help with housing and to ensure that our tenants, whether private or public, actually have a real voice. So my thanks again to officers, because that is going to be quite, I think, quite a showcase for Cheltenham, and I'm really pleased with that.
Councillor Baker.
I spent a really nice afternoon in the sunshine at the crematorium today, and we had a visit from our ecologist advisors, and we have an issue with the health and safety and the badgers at the crematorium. And I invited couple of members of the Gloucestershire Badger Group as well. And we actually had a really, really informative afternoon. And I think we've got a really progressive way forward now. So I'm looking forward to now developing that further with the ecologists that we've previously engaged with. They were brilliant, I have to say. So that's hopefully some really good news on that. Friends groups. I mean, we are so blessed in our town, as we all know, with friends groups. And we had the Parks Green Spaces team had a meeting with all our friends groups a month ago, I suppose. I'm looking at the way forward of how we manage our friends groups, because obviously it's quite a strain on the Green Space team, which is fairly small, to manage all these groups. So that was quite an engaging and useful afternoon. And we'll be interested to see how that develops now going forward. And I was talking of volunteer groups. I joined the Guardians of the River Chelt, which is a relatively new group, but they've been going for a couple of years. Fantastic group of local volunteers, and we were in the River Chelt in St Peter's Ward, not picking out a huge amount of rubbish and litter, but great shout out to them, because they are a fabulous, fabulous group. And in terms of the parks team, it's great news. We're starting to do some work now at Ben Hall to look at traveller incursions, and hopefully we'll have some measures going in there this year. And also working on Hatherley Park in terms of Hatherley Lake, huge issues there with dredging and so on. And we're hoping, I'm pretty sure that's going to start this year as well. So lots of good stuff going on.
Councillor Jeffries.
Thank you, Leader. I've said it once, I'll say it again. I'm all kind of envious of my colleagues when they're in the sunshine or at some festival or a carnival or international travel, but we'll keep crunching the numbers and dealing with the property issues over in my department, don't worry. It's very difficult to try and highlight property issues because there's obviously lots of negotiations and confidentiality involved. So I've got nothing specific around in that regard, but I did want to put on my record my thanks to Gemma Bell, our Director of Finance, Assets and Climate, who's gone on maternity leave. I just wish her all the well. I know she'll be watching us because she'll be making sure I've not strayed too far off the reports and the paperwork. I say she might watch us, she probably isn't, bless her. But yeah, on her maternity, I wish her well, and I'm sure we all do. Thank you, Leader.
Well, again, I think my entire life at the moment is going between corporate governance review on town and parish councils. We've had the data back for that. It's been analysed. I haven't shared it yet because we're just putting back together the working group to look at that for the next steps in that. Other than going to London to actually be hosted by our MP in Parliament, and there were lots and lots. The university was there. It was organised actually by the university, by Glasgow. It was just a shame that all the ministers that were invited got the sack in the reshuffle, so they didn't come, because obviously they weren't in the role anymore. So that was a little bit disappointing, but nevertheless, launching the Skills Hub for Gloucestershire was a good event. Other than that, the whole process of the local government review process on LGR takes up hours a week, and reading of papers. I seem to spend more of my time on the computer. I've had some very lovely invitations to go and join the Oriole Singers for their 50th anniversary at Pitbull Pump Room. And because it's Saturday, I thought, yes, I'm going to go and do that. And then again, it's the 50th anniversary of the Holst Museum, which hopefully Councillor Telford will get an invite to because I can't go. And but it's, you know, I really enjoy those events and the opportunities to do them because actually you get to meet our residents in a different sphere, which is always good to talk. I don't think there's anything I've missed. If there is, I will do it next time. So that now leads us on to the decisions of Cabinet. The first decision, 15th of August, was one that I took to enter into a contract with Fireproof Window Company Limited to supply and install 76 fire-rated windows. The second decision was that of Councillor Mike Collins, Planning Policy Manager role.
Thank you, Leader. I'm aware that I've already briefed Cabinet colleagues on this in the past, but for this meeting, I'll just very briefly explain what's happened. We do have a very good senior planning policy manager who works with us here at Cheltenham Borough Council. That person is, however, a subcontractor, so he's not actually a permanent member of staff. There's a massive recruitment challenge, a recruitment and retainment challenge going on across the whole of planning, but especially in planning policy management. A lot of that officer's time is being taken up working on the Strategic Local Partnership, the SLP. So we have spoken to our partners. We're going to do something slightly different now. What we're going to be doing is the three strategic partners, that's ourselves, Tewkesbury Borough Council and Gloucester City Council, are going to fund 2 roles. So we're going to have 2 senior planning policy managers across the 3 partners working for those local authorities, but also for the SLP. And we're all going to joint fund that. So the 3 partners will make an equal contribution to the cost of that. And also the SLP budget itself will be making a contribution to fully fund that role. And when I spoke earlier on, I looked across at Councillor Jeffries and I forgot to mention that all of those new roles that we've recruited recently are fully funded. Okay. So again, it's something that's going to strengthen the service that we offer. And the SLP is really exciting because there's so many new things there that are going to be taking place. And we want to make sure we've got the right officers there to help us create those policies and keep them up to date and relevant. So that's it. Thank you, Leader.
Councillor Telford.
Thank you, Leader. Mine was simply, well, not simply, it's quite a long document, but it was the grant agreement for the Everyman's grant. Obviously, they receive that currently every year. That amount of money, that's been in the budget and is in the budget. But with our kind of new grant policy, we have to have more tangible written down outcomes and KPIs for why we are giving them that money. And as you know, obviously they're in our building for a start, and it's important that that is protected for the future. They're a great cultural asset to our town, but also they do a lot of community work, and the Grove Street project is one example, but they've done a video on their YouTube, which is worth watching, of a lot of the community work that they do in our town. So it's kind of laying that out clearly so residents can see what we expect the Everyman to do for the money that we're giving them, which I think is a really, really positive thing to do. Thank you.
In the absence of Councillor Pinniger, he made a decision on the 11th of September to apply to the Heat Network Delivery Unit for round 15. So fingers crossed, because that makes a big difference to our communities in particular. And then the final decision was one I took on the 11th of September. It's all very exciting, but very important to keep our payment system on track. We needed to renew the contract with Civica. So I don't have any other business that I determined to be urgent and requires a decision. We do have briefing notes that are attached for information on the corporate risk register. And then the final item of the evening, and I do have to read this out, but I think I will be told, unless we do have some exempt minutes, if we want to discuss it, we need to go into exempt session. But if you're happy to just show of hands to approve, then we don't need to go into exempt session. So does any member want to discuss? No, clearly not. Oh. Show of hands that we approve the exempt minutes. Thank you, that's unanimous. So with that, that is the end of tonight's meeting. So thank you, everybody.